Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of Loon Talk. This will be a very quick edition. We've both got time constraints here, and no AJ today, so it's just Dan Terhaar and myself. Dan, how you doing today?
I'm good. We're very important people. We have to spread our time out. So many people want a piece of us. So
we've got so many other things going on. We don't have as much time as we would like to break everything down. So we'll just stick to the basics today. We'll stick to Minnesota United's 1-1 draw against Real Salt Lake, their upcoming game against Houston Dynamo, and of course the big news of the week, which let's just start off with it here, Dan.
Okay, let's just jump into
it. Let's just break this one down. Emanuel Reynoso, for the third time in a year, is a no-show for Minnesota United. Andy Greeter reporting it yesterday, and the club coming out with their own statement saying that he is no longer, he didn't show up to his green card meeting. Obviously, getting the green card would help the Loons because it takes him off of one of their 8 international spots. Those are highly coveted because it allows, roster construction and flexibility and everything. But excuse me for my child in the background. You will hear him. But Emanuel Reynoso, once again, a no-show for this club in Argentina or South America or somewhere, but not showing back up with the club. We've seen him for 31 minutes this season. Is this it for Reynoso?
Boy, I don't know. We can only go on what we know. And we as broadcasters for the club know maybe a little bit more than the general public. They don't tell us much. They keep it pretty quiet. So with what we know, it feels like this is a guy that's just got a real problem committing. I mean, this is not something new. And that's the question. How long do you stay committed to a guy who is really, from what we know, not showing much commitment at all? And at some point you got to say, okay, we need to move along. We need to throw these resources somewhere else. But at the same time, he's such a good player. He's so dynamic. One of the best 10s in the league, one of the best players in the league. So you want this to work out. But I got to tell you, Jonathan, like I said, with what we know, it doesn't feel good at all.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, you kind of laid it out there with how good he is and what he can do and basically his skill level compared to the rest of the league. Beyond Messi, he's hands down to me one of the best players in this league, if not the best outside of Lionel Messi. And how do you comfortably say, all right, there's a certain level where talent will only accept so much with how much talent you have. And Reynoso's got ounces and pounds and pounds and pounds of talent. But with how little he shows up over the past 12 months, this is now 3 times in 12 months. Now, granted, one of those, as he said, was due to his girlfriend being pregnant and wanting to line up medical care for her. But this is now 3 times in 12 months that he's either shown up late or just not shown up at all for a large portion of the season. I don't know at this point with the direction that this club seems to be heading, with the new tactics and style that they want to play, how much does he actually fit into what they want to do? And we saw it a little bit last year at the beginning of the season, so I don't want to go too hard into this narrative, but so far this season without Emanuel Reynoso, the club has been doing just fine. 3 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, near the top of the Western Conference. Now, they had a similar start last year without Reynoso, but then it all kind of fell off, probably mainly because Robin Lod got injured and they really had no dynamic playmaking from there. But without Emanuel Reynoso this season, it seems like they haven't missed a step, and we've only seen him for 31 minutes. Take that for what it's worth.
So, what you could argue is that Robin, from what you just said, you could argue that Robin Lod is more important to the club than Emanuel Reynoso.
Yeah, I think at this point, with how they set up and how they want to play, Emanuel Reynoso doesn't necessarily fit. And I've been kind of dancing around this one for a little bit now on the separate podcast that we all do, that his lack of tracking back kind of hinders what they want to do with this high press and with a full commitment from the entire squad of getting back and then countering in transition. Yes, in those transition moments, he's fantastic, but not having him there allows them to use everybody else as creative outlets instead of just focusing on one guy and getting the ball into one guy. So it spreads them out and allows them to do different things, but it also takes away a huge playmaker. So it's a very fine balance the they have to thread here, but it also seems like at this point the fan base is just kind of ready to move on from Reynoso 3 times in 12 months. It seems like they're all just like, all right, let's just move on. Let's continue forward with what we've got here, because what we've got here is really exciting. We saw that Saturday against Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, the good news is about this whole situation is he's not hurting the team right now directly. They're playing well. They're playing without him. They proved that they can play with the best teams in the league without him. I think my biggest concern is that he doesn't go somewhere else and play in this league.
Yeah,
I mean, that's my biggest concern. I don't want to have to face him. He's either, in my book, he's either playing for Minnesota, or I don't want to see him. Otherwise, Minnesota better get greatly compensated for Emanuel Reynoso. But last Saturday, another last-minute thriller at Allianz.
absolutely. I mean, the Loons go down 24th minute to who else but Chicho Arango, scoring in the 24th minute. Great header by him, excuse me. But after that, it was all right.
All right.
But after that, Minnesota really took over and throttled Real Salt Lake. The Utah side, kind of, as Zarek Valentin pointed out on the broadcast, kind of shelled up and sat back and just kind of tried to absorb the pressure. And Minnesota were all over them after Arango put Real Salt Lake up 1-0. And that ended up eventually leading to the goal from Tani Time, because that's all this kid does, is comes on as a substitute and scores goals and goes home, sleeps, eats, repeats. That's what he does. And it's great for this squad. Super sub of the year already for me.
Yeah, let me say that, by the way, how wonderful it was to have Zarek Valentin up in the booth, because he's got a little niggle, as they say, a little nick or a niggle. And I don't know if he's joining us in the booth on Saturday. I hope he's not, because they actually could use him on the pitch. But I hope he is for broadcast, because I got to tell you, that guy, what is he, 32?
Yep.
I think 32.
33 this year.
I don't know how many more years he's going to play, probably as long as he can. But I got to tell you, he's booth ready. He is ready for the broadcast booth right now. So that was fun, really fun. But yeah, to me, it was kind of after the goal. It's not like, bam, we took over, but it was kind of a sneaky, we kind of took over covertly, because all of a sudden we got to half and went, oh, after their goal, we played pretty good. And then you got into the second half and didn't start, spectacular, but all of a sudden it was, whoa, we've been dominating. You know what I mean? They just took over, and it was smooth. And as Zarek said, when Tani did score, he said, hey, we deserve that.
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely deserved it. And with the way they played. So looking kind of at the stats as I was throughout the match, at one point before Real Salt Lake's goal, Salt Lake had 60% of the possession, and by the end of the night, Minnesota ended up with 54. So after that goal, they really started to take over. It really felt like it was wave after wave after wave of attack for Minnesota, and Real Salt Lake really struggled to control the ball and pass it clean out of their own end, and that allowed Minnesota to play right how they want to play, with that high press, keeping the ball in those dangerous areas, and just rotating and reshuffling the ball in the attacking third and in the Salt Lake half, and getting dangerous chances, and ending up on the night with 26 shots, which is, I think, the most of the season, maybe outside of Austin. Can't remember what Austin was, but that's a lot of shots. And Zach McMath stood on his head. He was a freaking wall on Saturday for Real Salt Lake, but eventually Tani Time scored again, poked it into the back of the net. Great goal call from you. Great reaction from Zarek, which we posted the video on the Twitter feed. So go watch that. It's a fantastic video, and awesome goal from the Loons. And it really shows, once again, getting another late goal again from a substitute, just the desire and the will and the fight from this squad, which seems to be kind of the theme of this year for this club.
Yeah, and they were dominant at the end, and it was just, you felt like if there's enough time, even at halftime. I was talking to someone in the press box, and they said, boy, if you could have had 5 more minutes, I think they would have gotten one at halftime. Yeah. It was that way at the end too. And let's not overlook if you watch that goal again, the spectacular move and play by Robin Lod to somehow create himself enough space and find a way to get the ball through where Tani could redirect that in. And again, Robin Lod has been nothing but spectacular. whether it's working with Pookie or at this point with whoever comes off the bench. But apparently, what did Coach Cameron say? Tani time. It's time.
Yeah.
Extra time is now Tani time. So I just don't want to forget how nice of a play that was by Robin Lod to make that happen.
Yeah, he makes an excellent turn after the ball kind of gets crossed in and gets shuffled around. He makes an excellent turn where he has the ability to kind of turn away from goal and go back towards his own goal. But the Real Salt Lake defender's kind of on that side waiting for that to happen and leaving all of this space at the end line there to run to. And Robin Lod just expertly runs into it, crosses the ball into a dangerous area. Zach McMath can't get his complete hands on it, and Tani's just there. Like Adrian Heath's favorite phrase for strikers, a fox in the box, just there, and just pokes it into the back of the net. That's just an absolute poacher's goal. Just being in the right area at the right time, and that's impressive to see from a young kid like Tani. And you like to see that, and we've seen it a number of times now. This club just continues to get these young kids to play well. I think this was probably the midfield's best performance with how they really hassled Real Salt Lake's midfield. That Minnesota's midfield struggled a little bit in the first half, but in the second half, you saw how Real Salt Lake struggled to get the ball out of their own half. It wasn't clean at all. We saw Sonny Dotson go out at halftime due to a little bit of an injury. So hopefully nothing too serious there. Hopefully we see him this week against Houston because he's been excellent this year for this club. But Alejandro Braun kind of made up for a shaky performance against Columbus in the second half. He had a really good performance against Real Salt Lake. This midfield really started to control things in that second half against Real Salt Lake and really were one of the big reasons why this club drew on Saturday.
Yeah, it did feel like a win. Easy slip of the tongue there. Yeah, you know what? In so much of that second half, I don't know what the exact numbers were for intercepts and takeaways and turnover. I mean, they were constantly forcing turnovers in the other opponent's half. Boxel was hanging out in the center circle most of that second half. He didn't have to retreat very often because the midfielders did such a good job of forcing them into making bad passes, turning the ball over. It was kind of fun to watch. And that's what built that, because when you get a ball, you turn the ball over in the opponent's half of the field, you've got such a short field that if you can, get the ball wide quickly or complete one pass, all of a sudden you're in the final third or in the 18. So you're right. The midfield was outstanding, particularly in the second half.
Another guy who deserves a lot of praise and credit for how he played, especially over the last 2 weeks, Devin Padelford. Going from left back to center back, it's not an easy transition. I was talking with Zarek before the match started and asked him what that transition's like and what kind of goes into that. He goes, it's actually easier than you think. It's still difficult because you're asking the player to do a lot of different things, but you have the guy behind you in Dane St. Clair, but you're kind of the last line of defense ahead of Dane St. Clair, whereas on the outside back, you still have the center backs there behind you. So it's asking you to do a little bit different stuff, obviously. And Devin Padelford's handled that expertly over the last 2 weeks against some pretty tough opponents in Julian Carranza and Mikael Ure and the rest of the attackers in Philadelphia, and then Chicho Arango this week in Real Salt Lake. And they really did a good job between him and Michael Boxall and the rest of the defense of limiting Real Salt Lake's chances.
Yeah, and part of that reason was because Devin is an amazing athlete. I mean, all these guys are great athletes, but he is very athletic. He's very young, and he's not afraid. The moment's not too big for him. Okay, so you're moving me 10 yards to the right. No big deal. I'm fine. And he used to be a forward at one point in his soccer days. So here's a kid that's just versatile, and he's just such a great athlete. He adjusts, and yeah, he's a guy that we're going to see. We'll probably see him play before he's done as a Loon. Probably play all four positions in the back at some point, is my guess.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. So that also brings us on the defensive side to the elephant in the room with Josef Rosales, his second red card of the season. He'll be out this week against Houston. Obviously, we're not big fans of that second yellow that ended up being a red card on Rosales. It was kind of a weak, soft second yellow that ended up in his red card later on in that match. So Minnesota will have to find a way to get around that absence as well as the injury to Miguel Tapias, which seems to be hanging around still. So they're kind of thin on that back line right now, but they've got some youth guys who could step in that we would like to see at some point here in Victor Eriksson and Hugo Bacharach. How will they play at MLS level? They've got a tough opponent against Houston coming up, so we'll see how they adjust. But that absence of Josef Rosales is going to be a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one. They're thin. They're not done, but they're getting thinner. I think, Josef has to take responsibility for pushing someone, but I don't think anybody should get a red card when there was clearly an embellishment or a flop, whatever you want to call it. I think that the referee's got to be better than that, and I think sometimes you just need to go upstairs and or don't make that call. All the activity and the contact and the chippiness and some of the dirty plays that go on when people are lining up for corner kicks. I mean, they step on feet. They do. It's nasty in there. And then to call a soft little push that was clearly embellished, that was a bad call. Big mistake there by the referee. But you move on. Maybe we see Victor Eriksson alongside Boxy in there. I don't know what they're going to do, but whoever steps in to that back four is going to have a lot of pressure on them against Houston. And, if they can hold up, then I think we're in pretty good shape defensively as long as we get Tapias back and healthy.
So the draw for Minnesota brings them to 3-1-2 on the season, 11 points, sitting fourth place in the Western Conference. Their next opponent this Saturday, Houston Dynamo, same time, same channels, same everything. You can follow us and listen to us. We're still not sure about Zarek. We're hoping that he's on the field, but if he's not, then hopefully he's up in the booth with us because as you said, it's a win-win
for us
because he was fantastic. He was excellent. You said, very booth ready. And if that was his first time in the booth, that was an incredible debut for him. But yeah, next up for Minnesota, Houston sitting on 10 points this season. So just 1 point back of Minnesota, 3 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw for them, 7 goals scored, 6 goals allowed. Been a little bit of an up and down season. They started off a little bit shaky, a draw and a loss, but then went on a 3-game winning streak and then before losing to Chicago this last weekend. So what do you take from Houston and what do you expect to see in them this week?
I don't know what to expect to see in them. They, like you said, they've had some mixed results. They've looked really good. They've looked really bad. So I think they're one of so many clubs early in the year that we're still trying to figure out who they are, how good they are. So I don't know what to expect out of them, but they're going to be pushing offensively. We know that. They're going to try and force things a little bit like Minnesota. They're better when they are putting pressure, when they're doing a high press, when they're playing in the other opponent's half the way Minnesota's been this year. So I think from what we know, I think they right now, this should be a pretty good matchup. I think they match up really well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this one plays out this season because a little bit of back and forth last season between these two sides. We got Teemu Pukki's first goal last season, an incredible turn from him, incredible pass from Emanuel Reynoso in that one, but a couple of back and forth performances, as 3-0 loss for Houston last year against Minnesota, and then trying to find the other result against Minnesota, a 1-0 loss as well. So 2 Minnesota wins last year against Houston. So interesting times considering Houston were pretty dang good last year, winning the U.S. Open Cup, beating Miami, and then finishing very high in the Western Conference. We'll see how they continue to follow that up, but it'll be interesting for sure, Dan. Saturday, 7 p.m. pre-match show, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. Me and you on that broadcast. Maybe we'll have Zarek. Maybe we won't. We'll see. We'll let you know. We'll tweet that out and make sure everybody knows whether he'll be on the broadcast. But since it's a home game, you can also listen to us on Apple TV. Just go and click the little circle icon with the 3 dots and change your audio feed to the home radio broadcast because let's be honest, we're more fun. And, we may or may not have a home bias.
Just ask us. We're more fun. Yeah.
Dan, we'll end it there since, as we mentioned at the top of this, we have time constraints. We're very busy people. We're very important people, and other people need a lot of time from us. So we're gonna go. We're gonna go and do that, and we'll be back right here next week, Loons fans. Talk to you then.
Can't wait for Saturday. See you next week here.